Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Escort him out. My wife didn't even look at me when she said it. She was standing at the head of the conference room table in a white blazer, hands folded, voice flat, like she was dismissing a vendor, not ending a marriage and a career in the same breath. 2 security guards were already at the door. Half the executive team stared at the table. The other half stared at me, waiting to see if I'd break. Then Claire slid a manila envelope across the polished wood. "You'll be receiving formal notice from HR," she said. "And those are your divorce papers." For 1 second, the whole room went completely silent. I looked at the envelope, looked at the guards, looked at the woman I'd built a life and a company with from nothing. Then I smiled. Not because it didn't hurt. Because in that exact moment, I realized she thought she had already won. I picked up the envelope, turned to my assistant, Emma, who was frozen near the wall with her tablet still in her hand, and said, very calmly, "At 3 o'clock, get everyone from this room into the boardroom." Claire crossed her arms. "You're not in charge anymore." I kept my eyes on Emma. "And bring the packets from outside counsel," I said. "When I'm done, fire every one of these people." That was the moment their faces changed. Because until then, they thought I was the one walking into the trap. I'm not the kind of man who throws things or screams when his life falls apart. I've always been the quieter one. Claire was the face. I was the structure behind the face. 10 years earlier, we built Veil Dynamics out of a 1-bedroom apartment and a borrowed warehouse desk. She could sell air to a drowning man. I could build systems that actually worked. She handled investors, media, partnerships. I handled operations, product, logistics, staffing, the 1,000 ugly details nobody claps for. Together, we were dangerous. At least, that's what I used to believe. By the time our company crossed 200 million in revenue, Claire had become something people wrote profiles about. Magazine covers. Panels. Awards. The relentless visionary. The female titan reshaping tech logistics. She loved every second of it. I didn't mind staying out of the spotlight. Honestly, I preferred it. 3 years before all this happened, I stepped down as CEO and let her take the role officially. I stayed on as head of operations and board chairman. The public story was that we were a modern power couple making bold leadership moves. The truth was simpler. I was tired and I trusted my wife. That was my mistake. The change in Claire didn't happen all at once. People always imagine betrayal comes with obvious signs. Lipstick on a collar. Late-night phone calls. A stranger's perfume. Real betrayal is usually slower than that. It starts with tone. She stopped asking. Started informing. She stopped saying we. Started saying, my company. At dinner, she would scroll through emails while I talked. In meetings, she began cutting me off in front of people who used to wait for my final call. She started holding strategy sessions without me. Then she made a joke at a leadership retreat that got a big laugh from the room. "Ethan is great with details," she said, smiling over her wine glass. "As long as the details happened 5 years ago." People laughed. I laughed too. But I felt it. Then came Victor. Victor Hale, our CFO. Perfect hair, perfect cufflinks, perfect talent for agreeing with Claire before she finished speaking. I hired him 18 months earlier because his numbers were clean and his references were elite. In hindsight, I didn't look closely enough at the kind of man who always seemed to know what powerful people wanted to hear. He and Claire developed that polished, over-synced rhythm that makes everybody else in the room feel like they're late to a conversation. Inside jokes. Shared glances. Closed-door meetings that somehow never made it onto the calendar. Still, I told myself not to be paranoid. Until Emma came into my office one evening after everyone else had left. Emma had been with me for 4 years. Smart, exact, impossible to rattle. She closed the door and said, "I think something's wrong." She showed me a request from Claire's office to pull archived copies of the founder agreements, shareholder structure, and my original employment contract. Not unusual on its own. But then she showed me the second request. My severance modeling. There was no reason for that unless somebody was planning a move. I asked if Claire knew Emma had seen it. Emma shook her head. "No. And there's more. She'd noticed HR preparing restricted access changes to my building credentials. My calendar permissions had quietly been altered. Legal had asked for a clean summary of any prior disputes involving my management style. Not actual misconduct. Just language. Narrative. Framing. They were building a case. I didn't confront Claire that night. I went home and watched her pour herself sparkling water like nothing was wrong. She asked if I'd be at the investor dinner Friday. Said yes. She nodded and went upstairs. No guilt. No hesitation. Nothing. That was when I knew this was bigger than marriage trouble. The proof came 48 hours later. Our internal controller, Miguel, requested a private call. He'd been with me since year 2, a numbers guy who spoke like every sentence had to pass through 3 filters before leaving his mouth. He looked sick. There are payments, he said. Consulting disbursements. Repeated. Approved directly by Claire and Victor. He sent me the files. The money was going to a shell firm with a polished website, fake staff pages, and one real owner hiding behind 2 LLCs. That owner was Victor's brother-in-law. Over 9 months, they had routed just under $3 million through it. $3 million. I kept digging. That same night, I got the second piece of evidence by accident, or maybe by fate. Claire left her iPad on the kitchen counter while she showered. A message popped up across the screen. Can't wait until he's out. Once the board vote is done, we're free. Victor. I didn't need to unlock anything else. I stood there in my own kitchen, staring at those words, and the strangest thing happened. I didn't feel rage first. I felt relief. Because once you know you're not crazy, once suspicion becomes fact, the pain changes shape. It becomes clearer, colder, easier to move with. The next morning, I called my attorney. Then an outside forensic accountant. Then the 2 independent board members who still answered my calls before PR got to them. By noon, I had the full picture. Claire and Victor were not just having an affair. They were preparing to remove me publicly, paint me as unstable and obsolete, and force a discounted buyout of my operational shares after tanking confidence internally. What they either forgot or never fully understood was this. I still controlled the founder voting block. Not because I was sneaky. Because I built the company that way from day one. Operational titles could change. Ownership didn't. Claire could fire me as an employee. She could not erase what was mine. So I let her continue. I let the all-hands meeting happen Monday morning. I let her stand in front of senior leadership with that calm, practiced face and announce a necessary transition. She said my role had become misaligned with the company's future needs. She said I would be stepping away. Then she pushed the divorce papers toward me in front of people who had eaten at our house. That part was for humiliation. That part was personal. What she didn't know was that outside counsel was already downstairs. Security had already been redirected by the board chair's office. The independent directors were already in the building. And Emma had every termination packet ready in a locked case. At 3 o'clock, they came into the boardroom confident. Claire sat near the center, legs crossed, like she was minutes away from cleaning up the final inconvenience of her old life. Victor leaned back with the kind of expression men wear when they think numbers make them untouchable. At first I felt empty. You don't watch a marriage die and come out cheering, even when justice is done. There's still grief. Still embarrassment. Still that private shame of wondering how long you were standing in a burning house calling it warm. But peace came later. Quietly. I stepped back from daily operations after stabilizing the company and helped appoint a better CEO than either of us had been by the end. I bought a smaller place. I slept. I started seeing my brother more. I learned what an evening felt like when I didn't spend it bracing for tension I couldn't yet name. And the strangest part? Losing the version of my life I thought I wanted gave me the first honest life I'd had in years. Claire took the stage from me, then my title, then my marriage. She thought that meant she had taken my power. What she really did was force me to remember where it actually lived. Not in her approval. Not in the company. Not in the image we sold the world. It was in my judgment. My patience. My name. My ability to stand still long enough to see the truth, and then act when it mattered. The day she fired me, she thought she was ending my story. She was wrong. That was the day I finally took it back. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one.